Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and in this video, we will cover how long trainees should rest between sets to maximize muscle hypertrophy. First, we need to establish what the goal of hypertrophy training is. Essentially, to maximize muscle growth, we want to make the muscle groups being trained the limiting factor. So a set should only be stopped because the muscle cannot lift the weight anymore. This ensures that we fully stimulate the muscles without being limited by other systems. Let's now explore how interset rest influences hypertrophy training. By shortening rest periods, fatigue accumulation is greater. This means that the following set will be performed with reduced quality. This may mean that we have to perform less reps, or we may have to drop the load to get the same number of reps. The shorter our rest periods become, the more fatigue that accumulates and the more our performance will be affected. Longer rest periods essentially have the opposite effect on performance. If we rest longer, we can perform more reps and load since fatigue has more time to dissipate between sets. The longer rest periods are between sets, the greater performance will be on the subsequent set. When we talk about fatigue, we have multiple systems that can fatigue and contribute to a reduction in performance. We have central systems that can fatigue and local systems that can cause fatigue. Central fatigue refers to systems that impact the entire body. For hypertrophy training, we don't want central fatigue to limit performance because we aren't trying to improve these systems, we are trying to grow specific muscles with specific exercises. If we are training for maximal strength or for endurance, then we may want to develop these central systems, but they aren't relevant for hypertrophy training. The first central system that can fatigue and limit performance is the central nervous system. The central nervous system refers to the ability of the brain and spinal cord to contract muscles. If the central nervous system as a whole is fatigued, then the muscles won't be able to be pushed close enough to failure for best hypertrophy gains. CNS fatigue is very difficult to measure and quantify, but we can use two subjective ways to assess its readiness. First, we can use general coordination of the exercise. If you start performing a compound lift and it feels like your technique is slightly off, or you can't control the weight as well as usual, then this may be a sign your CNS isn't recovered enough and you need more rest. The second measure we can use is the mind-muscle connection. If you are going through an exercise where you usually get a strong sense of muscle contraction, but don't feel the muscles as usual, then this may indicate your CNS needs more rest time. The second central system that may limit performance is the cardiovascular system. This refers to the ability of the heart and lungs to pump oxygen to the working muscles. While cardiovascular adaptations are important for endurance athletes, we don't want this system to limit performance for hypertrophy training. If the trainee has to stop a set because they are out of breath, then the muscles may not be taken close enough to failure to maximize hypertrophy adaptations. Cardiovascular recovery can be assessed using heart rate and breathing rate. The trainee should allow breathing rate to come back down to a regular level, and if they have a heart rate monitor, they can ensure heart rate has come back down to a somewhat steady level. The second category of fatigue that may limit performance is local fatigue. Local fatigue refers to the muscles themselves limiting performance. We want the muscles to be the limiting factor for hypertrophy training because this is where we want the adaptations to occur. So if we can't perform any more reps on an exercise because the muscle can no longer contract and produce enough force, then that is a good thing for hypertrophy gains. Local fatigue can occur in the actual prime movers of the exercise. For example, the chest, triceps, and shoulders may fatigue and limit bench press performance. This is what we want to happen, so that the adaptations occur in the target muscles. However, we also want to make sure that we perform enough reps on each set to provide enough mechanical tension. So even if all other systems are recovered, we still want to make sure the prime movers are recovered enough to perform the next set at least in the 6 to 20 rep range. The other form of local fatigue that can occur is the assistance muscles for the compound lifts. For example, the forearms and biceps may be fatigued and limit performance of rowing exercises. This will mean that the arms fail before the back and the back doesn't get the maximal hypertrophy stimulus. We can get around this to some extent by using straps and other equipment, but we still want to ensure that our assistance muscles are also recovered enough to ensure that they don't limit performance. So how long should trainees rest between sets from a practical perspective? As a general rule, trainees should make sure the other systems don't limit performance, which usually takes somewhere between 1 to 5 minutes between sets. However, this is quite a large range, which may be influenced by numerous factors. So here are a few guidelines to help trainees determine how rest periods may change based on different factors. The first factor to consider is if you are using a compound or isolation lift. Compound lifts will be more fatiguing on the nervous system because coordination demands are higher. They will also be more fatiguing on the cardiovascular system because more muscles are involved in the lift. And there are also more assistance muscles involved which need time to recover too. This means that compound lifts will generally require longer interset rest periods to ensure that the target muscles become the limiting factor, and not all these other systems. On the other hand, isolation lifts are less taxing on the nervous system, less taxing on the cardiovascular system, and don't involve many assistance muscles. Therefore, isolation exercises can generally get away with much shorter rest periods and still allow the target muscles to be the limiting factor. The second factor that can influence rest periods is training experience and strength levels. The more weight that is lifted, the more fatiguing this will be on all systems. Therefore, longer rest periods are required to recover between sets. A trainee who squats 80 kilos for reps won't need as much rest between sets as another trainee who squats 150 kilos for the same amount of reps. Even if the relative load is the same, the absolute strength of the lifter will influence rest periods, where stronger lifters will need more rest to recover between sets. And the last factor that will influence rest periods is individual variation. Some trainees can simply recover faster than others, while some trainees may take longer on average. Trainees should simply make sure that all other systems are recovered before performing the next set and go when they are ready. If this takes 3 minutes for one trainee and 4 minutes for another, that's not an issue at all. It just may be due to individual differences between the two people. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something out of this video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already.